I was about 28 and there was someone else in the car with me. And all of a sudden something picked up my car and moved it over to the shoulder. And about that time, an 18-wheeler went past by me, and I knew we would have died if that hadn't happened. At his funeral, I was leaning over his closed casket, just crying, saying how much I'm going to miss him. We were all in shock, and this warmth feeling came over me, like it infused my body with this warmth and love. And I heard, "The time is right. Your brother is with me, and I'm here for you." And I remember saying, "Oh my God, there really is a God." But when I was about 3 years old, I would see my previous lifetime. And I obviously was Jewish because I remember hiding. I remember hiding from the Nazi soldiers. And I remember them. Things are taught the way they're taught is so that he says, it's not to educate us, it's to dumb us down. And there's easier ways to teach math. But they don't want us to know that because he says all the answers are within math. Everything's math.
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. On this show, we talk about deep spiritual and mystical experiences of people which we normally shy away talking about. We are more than our physical body. We are spiritual beings on a human journey. And we discuss how a soul exists on multiple dimensions. We discuss science, technology, and spirituality point of views and perspectives on this show. Our purpose is to open our minds to limitless possibilities and our hearts to love and shine the light within bright. We have with us today Denise Ramon, who is a spiritual healer, medium, and a channeler from US. A very warm welcome, Denise, on the Multidimensional Soul Talk Show and a podcast. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here. I so appreciate it. It's good to be here. Thank you.
So you have had a very unconventional career as well as unconventional life. I understand you work in finance and alongside you have the spiritual side. So can you just talk a little bit about how you got into spirituality and how you started connecting with the higher beings?
Sure. So I just like to say, one is I wasn't raised in a religious environment. It's just, my family just wasn't there. So it's like my father passed away when I was 17 and we just didn't talk about it. Just didn't talk about it at all. So when I was 23, my older brother was 28 years old, passed away, and that changed everything. He was the firstborn. He's what made my mother a mother, and it was very devastating to all of us. And at his funeral, I was leaning over his closed casket, just crying, saying how much I'm going to miss him. We were all in shock, and this warmth feeling came over me, like it infused my body with this warmth and love. And I'm sure I was only there for a few seconds, but it just felt longer than that. And I heard, "The time is right. Your brother is with me, and I'm here for you." And I remember saying, "Oh my God, there really is a God." And there was a masculine energy. And I also, in that short time period, I knew that everybody goes to the other side. There is no hell. And that's the one thing I did believe in was hell. I didn't believe in all the other stuff, but I sure believed in hell. And then my brother is supposed to die August 9th. And so I kept that with me for a year before I told anybody. But during that time, and it was back before internet and that, I would just go do what my mentor told me to do. And that was go meditate, which I don't even know if I was meditating. I would just go sit somewhere and I would just connect to that energy and just say, please help me to keep moving forward. And of course, I was deeply sad and hurt and all of the above of my brother's transition. But I knew he was supposed to have transitioned on August 9th. And as I got comfortable with what I knew, source, universe, God, whatever you choose to call it, would give me some more information. That would be either through a book that came into my vision, to my eyesight, or a person or a sign on the street, or just a knowing. And I would digest with some of that, and then more information would come around. And that was the start of my journey. And from there, it just continued. Had I known then that I'd be doing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have done all the work, because that would have scared me back then. But I'm so grateful for my journey and that I kept doing everything. And then, of course, as you get on this journey, there's a healing process. So anything that you need to heal comes up. And of course, I've had things, like I had sexual abuse in my life that I had zero memory of that popped up. So working through that. And it seems like as we clear out what's been stuffing down in us for so long, when we clear that out, more things rise to the top where we can start seeing more of the goodness of what's out there. And not just what's out there, but what's within us. And we we can hear better, is how I say. We hear better. So that was the beginning of the beginning for me.
Wow. And did you follow any particular practices when you started getting messages? So, one is that you face loss of close ones very early in life, and two of them, your father and your brother, and you heard the voice of God. After that, what kind of practices did you follow to go deeper and uncover all the trauma and then rise through that?
Oddly enough, when I was a kid, I had friends that were Catholic, and they got to eat donuts after church, after Mass. And so I always wanted to be Catholic, because in my family, we didn't get to eat donuts and stuff, rarely, because my mother was very health conscious and she was like ahead of her time. So a friend of mine, when I told someone about my experience a year later, she says, "You should talk to my priest." And she was Catholic. So I went and talked to him, and I could tell by the look in his eyes, he had a similar experience. And so I came home and said, "I'm converting to Catholics." So that's what I did. I converted to being Catholic. And I remember in one of the classes that you have to take to become Catholic, they said, they were talking about what is a sin and what sends you to hell. And an old boss of mine's son had taken his own life, and they were saying how when you commit suicide, you go to hell. And I spoke up and I said, "That's not a true story." And I remember that priest had a change of heart during that time, because there is no hell. So how can you go to hell? So that was the beginning. And I took from the church, the angels, and some of the saints and the archangels. And I love the Blessed Mother. I took those things. And I don't know that I 100% believe taking the Eucharist, that is the actual body of Christ, as they say, but it was the rituals, and that's what was important to me at that time. In hindsight, I can see how I needed that. I needed rituals to get me going, because I didn't grow up with any rituals, and so this helped me with that, to get me going. And from there, the universe, source, God, whatever you choose to call it, put other people in my life. And then, and then I had a mentor, and I had experiences. And I would go to my room every morning and spend quiet time. Some mornings were aha moments, and other mornings was just, I sat in the chair. Sometimes I fell asleep. But yeah, that was the beginning of the beginning on how I got to know more.
So, can you share with us your most profound spiritual experience?
I didn't know it at the time, but when I was about 3 years old, I would see my previous lifetime. And I obviously was Jewish because I remember hiding, remember seeing hiding from the Nazi soldiers. And I remember them like they were marching in, they had guns on their shoulders and their helmets. And I was paralyzed in fear that they would find me because I was hiding like under things and just praying that they wouldn't take us, And I remember seeing that a few times and I didn't understand. And I couldn't stand anything to do with Germans. And oddly enough, my mother was German. She cooked German food and was very proud of her heritage. And I couldn't stand German food, nothing. I didn't even want to speak it, the word, because it just, and now I know why, because my mentor told me that's what was going on. And I've had quite a few, but another one was I remember when I moved from one house to another and my mother had already passed away. And I said, Mom, how are you going to know where I live? And I was just talking to her. And as I was getting ready to unpack another box, walked by her apparition and I could feel her. And I just started crying and I said, you didn't scare me. I was just caught me off guard because it did. It caught me off guard and I was just so surprised. But that was another profound one. But there's been many to let me know that they're around and not just them, but others, I mean, as I'm here and they're reminding me days in my teens. I was getting on the freeway once and I was about 28 and there was someone else in the car with me and all of a sudden something picked up my car and moved it over to the shoulder. And about that time an 18-wheeler went past by me and I knew we would have died if that hadn't happened. And I remember saying, I didn't touch my wheel. I didn't do nothing. And we didn't talk about it until about 15 minutes later. And then I couldn't wait to get home. But I knew then that the angelic realm, the angels, whatever you want to call it, definitely picked my car up and put me on the shoulder because I was just I didn't touch the wheel. Yeah. So those were some of the profound ones.
Wow, that's a huge miracle. So, do you connect with any archangel or angel in particular, or any spirit guides in particular? Can you talk about that?
I do connect with my team that I like to call they, which encompasses my higher self, which I believe we all connect with our higher self. My higher self and the team, I like to say, a council of people, of souls. It's a collectiveness of the energies. And that's who I mainly communicate with on a daily basis. I like to also connect with, which is all part of it because there is no separation, but source, I love to connect with source. And then depending on where I am and what I'm doing, I do connect with Archangel Michael and Archangel Raphael. I do talk with them often, and those are the main ones. I would say those are the main ones.
So, can we start the channeling? And can you explain to our audience, are you a conscious channeler? Are you a trance channeler? And what is your process?
My process is I just connect. And when I say I just connect, how Source told me years ago to explain it to people, I connect with what's in my heart, that energy that's in my heart. And when I connect in my heart, it's like it's a direct line that goes up and I just connect and it disconnects my brain and I just connect in there and I just go with what I'm feeling and put it into words. sometimes I think I need a larger vocabulary to put words to what they're telling me, because it's a frequency. It's not like they're talking on the telephone giving me words. It's a frequency. It's an energy that I'm translating into English. And sometimes there's words are hard to put to that sometimes, because more of a feeling, a knowing. But yeah, that's how I do it. I connect with my heart. And this is how everybody can do it. Connect with your heart. And if you don't know how to do that, think of something that brings you joy. It could be somebody gave you a piece of bubble gum, somebody told you were cute, or whatever. Your first date said yes, or whatever that brings you joy when you think of it. And when you're in that space, then you're connecting to source, and then start your chit chat. I'm just getting ready because my leg was crossed, and I just get uncrossed. Let the energy flow is what I'm hearing. Let the energy flow.
Yeah. So, do you get any visions or do you hear anything when you're channeling?
It depends. So I get both. I feel more than anything. I feel, and what I like to say is I see things, so I feel things. And I see color a lot, and the colors have a frequency to it, and there's a purpose behind the colors that I see.
Okay. Can we start channeling now?
Of course, of course, of course.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So first, we can channel Arnav. Arnav is here with us, and I would like to ask about. He himself had done a lot of research on his own, and he used to do that for any topic that he was interested in, and he had a very deep interest in spirituality, and he read a lot, and we used to have great discussions at depth, but none of it is actually taught in school. In school, and our education system across the world is so archaic that none of the spiritual principles or even handling emotions, feelings, and how to acknowledge that we are spiritual beings on human journey, none of it is taught. So what I don't know, what do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, he wants me to tell you that he's dressed in like a navy blue.
Okay.
His energy is like a navy blue, which to me that feels really warmth and very loving and grounding to me, that navy blue. And he was telling me as you're talking, that he is and was a philosopher in other lifetimes. So this is why he wanted to research everything, get more information, because that's just was in his nature to do that. He says, the reason things are taught the way they're taught is so that he says it's not to educate us, it's to dumb us down so that we don't know what we innately know within ourselves. So that's what it's for. It's to keep us, as he's showing me, it's to keep us down, so busy with all this other stuff that each section of the globe wants us to know, so that we don't know our authentic self. And he says it's funny because each part of the globe is teaching stuff about how wonderful they are and how horrible everybody else is. So it keeps us separated. It keeps the hate going, the separation, and that's the whole purpose of it. It's not to educate us. It's not to educate us. It's to educate us in a way, though he says, that's not useful. It educates us. Educates us. I can't say, in a way that it pulls us down from knowing the truth, is what he's telling me. And as he's showing me this, I'm like, yeah, each side of the planet tells information about the rest of the planet that's not true. So we have all of this bickering going back and forth. He says that's what the education teaches us. He says there's some good. He said there's some good. He says, but it's very limited. And the way he shows me limited, I feel like it's limited in the science field, and it's limited in the math field, because they teach it in a way that only a few can get to the top of it. And there's easier ways to teach math, but they don't want us to know that, because he says all the answers are within math. Everything's mathematical. And I've heard that before. Everything in this world is mathematical. He said how the planets are lined up, everything is done mathematical. He said millions of years ago, thousands of years ago, everything is done mathematical. Everything's designed to be lined up mathematical, the angles, the everything. He says it's all mathematical. We are limited to know that. Just very few of us know this.
So, what can we do to bring reforms in our education system?
He got excited. He's just all excited. He says, he says, doing what you're doing, Mom, bringing this out to everybody, because awareness, he says, bringing awareness. He goes, but what we can do on an individual level, he says, is start questioning things. And how you question things is, how is this working for me? Because we think we're doing it right because we're following the rules, the guidelines. But if you sit quiet, he says, for 5-10 minutes, you will find that you may not like doing it the way that's being told. Find your path, and that is spending time with self, reading books that interest you, not what you're told to read, but read books that fill your soul, is what he's saying. You don't have to be out there, he says, protesting and creating a bunch of havoc out there, because there are others who are doing that for us, he says, but it's more about educating yourself from within, he says. Find out what really makes you happy. He goes, most people don't even know what makes them happy. They go with what they've been told or what they've been instructed to make them happy. And people are told you can't do this because that's not a normal thing to do. You have to do things this way in order to be normal. And that's not a true statement. He says, your normal is going to be different from my normal, but it doesn't make either one of us wrong. And he says, this is how, he said, he's showing me, start teaching your kids to color outside of the lines. He says, we're told we have to stay in the line, start coloring outside of the line. And he's laughing. He says, this is going to drive people nuts who are very rigid on how things have to be. So, yeah, and I'm thinking, yeah, that would take, to just color outside the lines. He's showing me, he goes, free yourself up. He says, finger painting and lower grades, I guess he's talking like kindergarten and less. He says finger painting is so good for kids because it's teaching them how to create and how they don't have to have it a certain way. He says, but they don't teach finger painting or give that as an option that much anymore, the finger painting. But he says that is so good because you're just using both sides of the brain, and it's helping you to develop what feels good to you, he's saying. He goes, they need to bring that in more finger painting.
Okay. Yeah, quite unconventional. We are now seeing so much rise of AI, and it is going to be there in each and every field. And we are no longer going to function in the same way as we used to. So, I don't know what you have to say about that in terms of education and overall well being of humanity.
He tells me, and I feel like he's bringing his team in with me. So it's not just his words. I feel like his team is coming with this because it's a very heavy and deep topic right now at this time, he says, because there's so much fear wrapped around it. And that's the purpose, is to bring fear with it. Because when we are in the fear, we're we're detaching from who we are. So the main thing he says is don't get into the fear of it. He says it's like with anything, it's going to go one way for a little bit, but we're going to learn how to pull back. He says AI is not going to take over the world as people are predicting and fearing. And he says, Mom, you know that there's so much more than AI. So it just isn't going to happen. But the fear is what's creating it to look like it's going to happen. Our fear create what it is we think is going to happen when we're in that fear. He says AI is going to help with education to a degree, but it also is going to promote down the road individuals to think for themselves. And how he's showing me is it's going to be structured in a way that it's like so black and white that it's going to force us to think individually for ourselves. Now, some things the AI is going to work well with, and of course, there are going to be smart people who use that energy in not a good way and turn it around on things to where it's not a good use for us. But as we get more knowledgeable of what we're working with, we're going to start changing some direction in that area of the way it's going to go. For some reason, I feel like this is going to be, I don't know how he's showing, but he showed me for some reason, I feel like this is going to be a benefit for teachers because teachers, it's almost like they don't have any authority at all. They are told how things are going to be. It's not like teaching 60 years ago. They're being told what to teach and they can't go veer away from their program at all. And I feel like for the way he showed me, I feel like there's going to be more teacher involvement with things with this. So this will be a good thing. And also, he says they're going to create down the road something with AI that's going to be beneficial for kids who just don't work well in a traditional platform of education. And so this would be very good for that, he says, and it's going to happen. I feel like it's going to be 10 plus years out, if not longer. But he says they already are looking into that because in parts of the world, they have like what we call here alternative schools because the regular schools aren't working and haven't been working. He says he taught himself in school. The teachers didn't teach him. He taught himself. I feel like he just played the game with them and let them think that they were teaching him. And this is going to also empower teachers to want to teach because he says teachers are falling away because of how the educational system is instructed. I'm asking him, are they going to increase their pay? And he says that's not going to be for a while, but things are going to be structural different to where it's more balanced with things.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate that, except for a couple of countries like Finland and Netherlands, probably where teachers are paid good, as in otherwise it's a very good profession, and it is a profession where actually they get to shape children literally, but
Yes.
it is not recognized so much across the world.
Yeah, and he says that's a deeper, that's there's more to it than it's not just that they don't want to filter more income into the education. It's he's showing me it's because of, I'm hesitant to say this, but he says it's because it's more of a female field teachers. And so there wasn't a need to pay them a lot of money. So it was almost like, even though it took education to get the teachers to be a teacher, it's almost like it was, it's like they got away with not paying the teachers much because it was a female position mainly. And as he says that, I remember only having two male teachers throughout my whole education, through first grade through middle school. Even in first grade, there were no male teachers at the time. But now things are coming up. He says things are coming up to the surface, and it's going to change. And um, he says equality is going to change. Equality.
Yeah. Yeah, what we understand is that there is going to be a rise in the feminine, the divine feminine, as we are ascending, and it's required that we have more nurturing, loving energy brought to forefront across the world. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this isn't just for women. This is because we have both masculine and feminine energy within us, both male and female. And it's to tap into that feminine energy more, because men, poor things, have been taught don't cry, act tough. You're not allowed to say you don't like, you just do it. And no wonder they die so young, and die before women. It's because they're denying a part of themselves. And it's becoming more where men are getting more in touch with that feminine side of themselves and not being ridiculed and stuff like that. So yeah, it is about that. It definitely is.
when we talked about AI actually helping in all the fields in education, especially, and it's quite promising. But at the same time, what we need to, not from fear or panic perspective, but what we need to keep in mind is we don't become another Atlantis. So I want to know from Arnav if we have had past lives, as in not past or future, parallel lives in Atlantis, and what happened over there exactly, how it got destroyed, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again.
He tells me, there still is the life of Atlantis going on. It's not gone. It's in another dimension. It's still there.
Wow.
And he also says that life is also helping to filter into this life so that we don't do a repeat. And that's one of the reasons why everything looks and feels like a mess to a lot of us. It's because it's, as he's telling me, and as I was told, it has to crumble before we can rebuild. And it's what's crumbling is the false beliefs that we thought we had before. And so now, as those false beliefs crumble and then everything else crumbles, now we can build up, is what he's showing me. And we're having help from previous lifetimes, previous, I'm trying to think of the word he's telling me, but previous generations is helping us in this lifetime. That's why there's so much uncertainty in that. He says, we are not going to be another Atlantis because we have learned so much from these different times. And he says, why do we think that we're able to tap into this and we know so much about Atlantis and other beings in that? He says it's because we are more evolved and we're learning how to tap into this. And he says, we've been doing this for hundreds of years, tapping into this energy and into the knowing. He says, all of that information is within us. It's just that we've been told that it's all on the outside and in the books. And therefore, you have to go to the books instead of going within. He says, we go to the internet now to look for everything, but it's within us. It's all within us. And he says, and there are thousands of people here that are doing incredible works. And when he says thousand, I feel like millions of people here doing this incredible work so that we don't repeat, because he says before the power got out of control for Atlantis, and this isn't going to happen again, because there's a level of consciousness that we have now that we didn't have then, that's not going to allow this to happen. He says, this is why you're doing the work that you're doing, because you're part of that consciousness. He's part of that consciousness. They're just all helping, and you're part of your helping this, So you're connecting with that consciousness that other people are doing the same thing, he said. So he says, get out of the fear. He says, fear is an illusion, as you know. And as he says that, I tell him, it feels real, though, sometimes when you're in it. It feels like a 12-foot thick wall to me. And he said, just start believing in something that you know is true, and hang on to that when the fear kicks in.
Yeah. And all of us, actually, especially light workers and star seeds, we are working towards anchoring in that higher vibration, the light, and higher level of consciousness over here. What can Arnav tell us about how to use science and technology in the best possible way to achieve that higher level of consciousness, the higher vibration? So how can science and spirituality integrate and we reach there faster in an accelerated way?
Well, he says science is kind of like proof, and that's what we want is proof, he says. And as he says that, he's shown me, and it's funny he's shown me because I had this similar thought. We don't see the air, but we know it's real. We can feel it. Our hair moves. We see the trees move, and we see the destruction it can do and stuff, So we can feel it, but we can't really see it. And he says, and this is the same thing with what science brings confirmation that energy's real and we're energy, he says. And they also break things down for us to prove on how things move and flow. And then he says, and then you bring this in, he says, science, and you bring it in with the stars and the planets and how everything lines up. He says, when planets are lined up certain different ways, your behavior is different, or just whatever, he said. So there is science behind all of that. But it's hard for us to comprehend that, he says, because we are still in the thought process that we're separate. We think because, he says, like for you, Mom, because you can't see Denise when you're not on Zoom, it's like saying she's not here, but she is here. We're connected, and and just the Zoom brings us together, but we're still here. But we think, in general, people think because they don't see it or whatever, that it's not there. It's still there. And he says, copy and paste what it is that you can't see. Copy and paste it to wherever you are so you can see it, because it's our thoughts that create us apart. But he says science helps to validate what other people have been talking about for so long, because they confirm a lot of stuff that is truth. And then the rest is for us to get within ourselves And he says, and you do that through meditation. And science has proven that our brain waves and everything shift and change when we get into a meditative state. They have proven that with people, with actual test people to prove that. And he says, and the military uses science to help them with what they do. So it's to embrace it, to bring it together. He says, they work together. Everything works together.
Yeah, true. CIA has research on astral travel, which was released a few years ago. So yeah, I am aware of that. In terms of technology specifically helping spirituality, I don't know, what can you tell about, let's say, crystals or sound? What kind of modalities and technology we can take help of to rapidly grow spiritually and anchor that higher vibration in over here?
Well, what he says is, whatever you gravitate to, crystals are there to help us. They're part of the earth. And he says they're there for us to help us, to anchor us, to open us up to whatever. And it's like, what? But he says, you don't have to have the crystals in hand to use it. You can just envision that you're in the cave with the crystal and pull the energy from that. He said, it's man that started chiseling away at the crystals in the earth because they saw that money was involved. So now they started mining them. You don't have to have the actual crystal in the hand. You can just envision that you're there and pull from the energy. He said, there's nothing wrong with having these crystals. He goes, some people are more in tune to it than others. He says, but then there's fragrances, and I feel like he's talking about incense and those types of things that help bring us together. He goes, there's nothing wrong with using these different modalities. It's whatever we're drawn to. Some people like statues and whatever that helps people. Some people light a candle. It's whatever you resonate with. But that doesn't make you more spiritual, as people say. He says, we're already spiritual. We just don't know it. And he says, that doesn't make you more enlightened or more spiritual, as people say. What it does is it helps you to feel comfortable. It's almost like confirmation, or gives you a comfort level about, yes, you're on the right path, because there is no books to go by. It's not like, okay, it's not like he says when you're pregnant and they tell you what to expect during your first month of pregnancy, second month. We don't really have those type of books per se, because each person is different. We can give you guidelines, but it's having these different objects. It just helps you to feel some sort of comfort, but each one can give you I've been in a room full of crystals and I had to leave because I felt drunk from it. The energy was so strong. But he says, get whatever helps you to get where you want to go. He says, and don't think it only has to be that one thing, because as you evolve, things around you will evolve.
Yeah, so true. Arnav talked about how there is a kind of effort to separate people across the world, that how every region it is thought how we are better than the others. So what can we do to get the best out of East and the West from spirituality perspective and work towards ascension?
Well, he says, all religions are basically, he's telling me, teaching the same thing in a sense, and it's about love. They just do it in a different language. And when I say a different language, a different way of teaching it. He says don't have judgment on other religions. And if you're in a religion that doesn't work for you, take what you get from it. He says, we're so into criticizing others so we can feel right. And he says, this is one of the things I've learned is there is no right or wrong. He says there's so much that the Eastern religions can teach the Western and vice versa. And as he says it, he goes, treat it like a buffet. Take what you want and leave the rest. And I love how he says that because I do that with some things. Even though I converted to over being Catholic, I've just picked from it, what resonates with me. And also some other forms of religion I picked from that, And it's not that I'm creating my own religion. He says we're designing what works best for us at that moment. Because who you are today is not going to be who you are tomorrow.
True.
So he says, stop the separation. Stop saying that one is wrong and one is right, regardless if it goes against everything that you believe in. Just know that it's working for whoever. So yeah, he's just showing me that somehow or another we created it to where there can only be one, and there's not one way, because there's not one species. He says there's many different species, so how can there be one? He said it'd be boring.
Yeah, that's true. So Arnav had told me after he crossed over that he is a messenger between the realms and he's also a teacher. So can you talk about, is the role same right now? What have been your learnings in the other dimensions, and can you share anything that will help us ascend?
He's getting excited again. He said, yes. He says, you all are expanding. That's what it's about. This is what this whole thing about is expansion. He goes, on the other side where I am, he says, it's about expansion. We're constantly expanding. He said, so whenever we expand, like here on earth, as we expand here, that helps them in their expansion as well, because there is no separateness. He says, there's only togetherness. And he says, so definitely he's expanding. He feels real strong to me, and I don't mean in muscles. I mean just his energy. It's just very expansive. He's not a young boy in age-wise. His energy though is very youthful feeling, because there is no I get tired, I don't want to do this. There's not that type of stuff. There's only excitement and joy. And he says his expansion involves that he gets to go to like what we would call mentors and learn even more about stuff that we don't even have a clue to knowing about, that he gets to know more, and he gets to keep going. He says there is no end. It's just about expansion, because there are others, and this is what he really likes. I feel like he was very much into to science per se, science and the planets, and that is what I feel from him. Because he says there's universes behind universes, and we don't get to just go and know everything when we go to the other side. It's about when we're ready, our expansion in what we do. And I feel like he's like knowing about 2 or 3 universes that are behind this universe. And he's showing me it's because not everybody gets to know about this, because in the other universes, he says, there is no killings. There is no war or anything like that. So he gets to get, like he's showing me little bits of information, and it comes like in drops. And he gets to bring that back with him, that he gets to not decide, but figure out, him and his team, on how to dispense that to you, so you will know how to dispense that to us. That is so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. He had
Wow.
taken me to parallel universes thrice, where he's physically there because I was missing him so much. And I told him that you take me to a parallel universe where you are there physically.
Mhm.
And he had taken me.
How beautiful. I know. And it's like, it's this stuff is incredible. And like I told you earlier, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. It's incredible. I'm just like fascinated by what he was showing me. That's just incredible. It's like, wow.
Okay. And how can people connect with you?
My website is Denise, Denise, Ramon, RAMON.com.
We'll give all the details in the video description. It's
Okay.
been such a pleasure having you here on my show, Denise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy for me. Thank you. And they're all saying thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say thank you, Source. Thank you, Arnav. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Dolores. And thank you, Dennis's team and my team. For all of you, so grateful for your presence and
Yeah.
assistance. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.